If you have a millennial in your life, then you probably have heard the term adulting, a verb that popped up in the social sphere about 8 or 9 years ago, describing the quote, practice of behaving in a way characteristic of a responsible adult, especially the accomplishments of mundane but necessary tasks. That's from Oxford Dictionary. Common examples of acts of adulting include making one's own lunch to take to work with them, or paying rent on time, cleaning the bathroom, or perhaps much less common, but still an adulting task, cleaning the unspeakable filth out of the bottom of the kitchen sink. This is a term that I have used on many occasions. Doing physiotherapy exercises every day, adulting, buying new tires for my car, actually saving money for new tires instead of realizing that I need new tires and have to make room on my credit card, adulting, buying new tea towels and turning the hand-me-down ones that I received from my mom several years ago into rags, adulting. Our story this morning spoke of Peter Pan, the boy who never grew up. The original story, written at the turn of the 20th century, was significantly longer. In fact, it's a full-length chapter book, and it dives much more into Peter's mindset than the version that I read to you this morning. In the final chapter, all of the Lost Boys choose to stay in London. They are adopted by Mr. and Mrs. Darling, and Wendy attempts to convince Peter to stay as well. I wanted to share the following exchange with you between Peter and Mrs. Darling. Mrs. Darling came to the window, for at present she was keeping a sharp eye on Wendy. She told Peter that she had adopted all the other boys and would like to adopt him also. Would you send me to school? He inquired craftily. Yes. And then to an office? I suppose so. Soon I would be a man? Very soon. I don't want to go to school and learn solemn things, he told her passionately. I don't want to be a man. Oh, Wendy's mother, if I were to wake up and feel a beard? Peter, said Wendy, forever the comforter, I should love you in a beard. And Mrs. Darling stretched out her arms to him, but he refused her. Keep back, lady. No one is going to catch me and make me a man. Mrs. Darling saw his mouth twitch, and she made this handsome offer to him, to let Wendy go to him for 1 week every year to do his spring cleaning. Wendy would have preferred a more permanent arrangement, and it seemed to her that spring would be a long time coming. But this promise sent Peter away, quite gay once again. I've had conversations with many people about the idea of adulting, and I believe that many, my parents and grandparents, and perhaps some of the people here, have an idea of adulting that is presented here in the final chapter of Peter Pan. That millennials, and perhaps some of the younger Gen Xers, don't want to grow up, would like their mothers to take care of them and continue to have adventures forever. Although it is true that young adults are living at home later into their 20-somethings, and many young adults spend years after school attempting to sort out careers before there is the ability to settle down into a rhythm, I don't believe that it has anything to do with not wanting to grow up. One of the most significant changes, or perhaps one of the significant realities from current day young adults, has to do with our current economy. Never in our Canadian history have a new generation of adults had to deal with such significant debt, lack of job opportunities, or the unsurmountable housing market. Here's an example of these drastic differences, a personal example. My grandfather finished his PhD program in 1966. Throughout his entire program, he was able to work throughout the summer to pay for his tuition and board while he was in school. He graduated with less than $4,000 in student loans, being able to work to pay off all the rest. And if he had actually finished his program in Canada, he would likely have not had to pay any debt back because the $4,000 was used to travel to England, where he did his doctoral research. My father finished a Master's of Science in Geology in 1998, 32 years later. He walked away from this experience with less than $40,000 in student loan debt. I finished my 2 master's degrees, the first a Master's of Divinity and the second a Master's of Art in Leadership Studies in 2018, 50 years after my grandfather had done his schooling. And I have $105,000 in student loan debt. That is a 2,600% increase over 50 years. Over that same time period, minimum wage has only increased 1,400%. I could tell you the same story for houses. When my grandparents and parents bought their first house and for how much, but I'm sure that you get the point. The economy holds significantly different scales than it did 50 years or even 25 years ago. And because of these differences, choices within my life are made at a completely different timeline comparatively. By the time my grandmother was 32, the age that I am right now, she had a 10 and a 7-year-old at home. My dad at 32, I was 9 and my brother was 7. Okay, Danielle, I hear some of you saying. When you mentioned adulting, you were talking about simple tasks like making lunch and buying tires. You weren't talking about having children. You're right. These decisions are significantly different. But I believe that there is a significant reason for that connected back to our economy as well. When I was in school, and I'm certain it's getting even worse today, classes like home economics, a subject that is supposed to cover personal and family financing, food science and preparation, nutrition and wellness, and consumer issues, was only offered as an elective, and it needed to fit in around all of the other possible electives that you wanted to take, such as drama, music, woodworking or auto shop, and even art. I know in years previous, this was a mandatory class. The first time that I sat down and discussed a household budget was when I was 28. Of course, I got snippets of things here and there. I knew how to grocery shop on a budget, mostly because my mom was always involved us in food preparation, and because I had to do meal plans and grocery shopping trips for scouting. I think that the biggest thing that has struck me, though, as I was researching for this service, was the amount of existential anxiety that comes up in people's discussions about adulting. Younger adults are not actually daunted by the need to prepare lunches or pay cell phone bills or buy new tires. They are celebrating the ability to control something in their lives and withdrawing their focus from things like living paycheck to paycheck, paying off our debt, and sometimes things that are even more significant, like the climate crisis, defunding police, or decolonizing our society. And of course, these are not things that are the sole responsibility of young adults or millennials. Some of these struggles weigh heavily on all of your hearts too, but it is a lot to hold on to while you're still struggling to save money for new tires. Like our centering words from this morning stated, being an adult is dirty work. Being an adult is hard, not just for millennials, but for all of us. And I think we all have our ways of celebrating. Me by proclaiming my ability to adult, and perhaps others by enjoying a glass of wine with dinner or some other libation, and still others by binging TV shows with your favorite snack, or perhaps just going to bed early. Sometimes I wonder if our congregations are stuck in this pattern of behavior too. Obviously not the adulting pattern, although many theologians and church history buffs would say that in terms of lifespan, Unitarian Universalism is still in its teenagehood years. But I mean this idea of existential anxiety, this idea of celebrating small accomplishments in order to withdraw our attention from other major concerns. Unitarian Universalism has been struggling with racial tension and white supremacy issues for the last 60 years since the merging of our two faiths. And there were significant issues down both sides of our ancestral tree. Our faith communities have struggled to live into our first principle of the worth and dignity of every person for the same amount of time. It has now been 8 years since the Canadian Unitarian Council presented a gift to the Commission on Truth and Reconciliation. And our congregations are still struggling to understand what colonialism and colonialist systems are, let alone understanding how to dismantle them. We celebrate small wins, and we should be celebrating these wins. Yesterday was the grand opening on our church property of the Community Fridge Project, a program that encourages mutual aid and acts of solidarity, not charity. There's a lot of information about this program in our congregation's newsletter, and you can find more information on social media under Kelowna Community Fridge. This is incredible, and I'm so happy to have had a little hand in helping this project go forward. And I'm also aware that we need to make changes so that people are not chronically facing food insecurity. We have focused on growth here at Kelowna Unitarian, growth in our membership, and specifically growing our members into younger age groups. But have we focused our growing on our own welcoming abilities? Have we focused on ways we do not attract, or perhaps why we have pushed away the people we do attract towards ourselves? We are concerned about increasing our volunteers and increasing our income, but how much time have we spent focusing on what it is that we have to offer new people attending this community? Perhaps this is an example of some of the easy achievements that we have been striving for while not paying attention to the bigger picture. For people who have been paying attention to the United States news over the last week, there might be another experience about one of these small win celebrations. On Tuesday afternoon, Derek Chauvin, the police officer who was tried in the death of George Floyd last summer, was found guilty on 3 counts: second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter. My social media pages were exploding with images and claims of a historical moment in America. Many people were celebrating the conviction of a murderer who was videotaped in the act. But this is but one drop in a very large bucket of change that needs to happen in dismantling the white supremacist system that we all belong to. And maybe this is why so many have called millennials the Peter Pan generation, because we are celebrating the small wins when the large ones, the ones that would make us real adults, are out of reach. Perhaps we are called the Peter Pan generation because it takes us longer to grow up than it did our parents and grandparents. It is taking us longer to make the same achievements that those of generations before were able to accomplish sooner in life. But we are all on the path towards becoming, towards figuring out what it means to adult, what it means to be responsible for actions and people and ideas, what it means to be responsible for the communities of which we are a part. It is good to be traveling this pathway with you all. Thank you for listening.